Two boys. One can't remember, the other can't forget. A teen hustler and a young man obsessed with alien abductions cross paths, together discovering a horrible, liberating truth. Now, what's like the first thing you hear or think of when you hear that description? What would you think this film would be about? I know it's kind of a vague summary, but what would you think this would be about? Aliens, right? I mean, that's what I thought. Aliens, or because it's one of the only clues you really get out of the summary. You hear alien abductions, and you're like, huh? So is this like a sci-fi film? Well, I'll tell you that Mysterious Skin is really nothing like that. I think it's actually a lot more real, quite the opposite of a sci-fi film, and you'll see why. So the film starts with uh, two different characters. We're gonna split this video into about three parts. Okay, so part one, we're going to focus on Neil. All right, he's kind of the star of the show. Not really the star of the show. What am I saying? Both of the characters are very much a big part of this film. But first, we're starting out with Neil, right? Played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So he is a character that's very focused on, and it starts off with him as a very young kid. Not super young, but, well, 8 years old, so quite young. He has a little league baseball match, and he's in the little league team. He's really, he's like the best player in their team, and everybody else sucks. But I mean, it's little league, so it doesn't really matter. It's just kids having fun. And he has this baseball coach who is very, just say, not good, and you'll see why as I continue going. So Neil lives alone with his mother. His mother is kind of goes around from boyfriend to boyfriend, is always meeting somebody new, hasn't really found a connection with anybody. She's kind of seeking for that, I think, throughout the entirety of the film. So her character is heavily flawed, of course, but she still cares about her son, but just isn't around to take care of her son as much as she should be. As only mother, it's probably really hard, but at the same time, there's a lot of trust being put onto the baseball coach, who really is not somebody you want to be putting your trust in to take care of your child. And you'll see why as we progress through this film. So in one specific match that this film focuses on is when he starts to get close with the baseball coach, because there's one match where he takes him home right after the match because his mom wasn't there to take him home. So he takes him home to the coach's house, right? And this is where I'm going to just bring up just a warning, to the trigger warning. Just know that this film heavily focuses on SA with children involved, so it is a very it's a heavy topic that not a lot of films explore, but this one does in a very respectful and in a way that just shows just enough that that isn't to be disrespecting the victims, but it shows just enough that it is still damaging and realistic, and devastating, but not enough that it becomes exploitative. I'm sorry. So it does it in a very respectful way, like I said. So he brings him home to the baseball coach's home. And I will say that this is where the story takes a major turn. When I went into this film, I went into it entirely blind, and that's what I recommend for other people to go into this film. That's how I went into it, and I was absolutely just devastated in a way that I haven't ever watching a film. This is one of the most devastating films I've ever seen in my life, and I mean, you can obviously see why. The subject matter is very serious, but it also just the way it carries throughout the entire film. It's not for shock value. It's realism. It shows uh, what it's really like and how it affects people um, throughout their entire lives, and how someone who goes through trauma like this will never recover. They'll never heal entirely because it's a part of them, and and they can never get rid of it really, and it's tragic, but it's true, and that's why it's devastating. Um, yeah, so Neil, he the way that they portray the coach is this like nice, wholesome, sweet dude. The thing is, for me, the moment he brought him home, I knew that he was up to something bad. I knew, right? I just had a feeling in my gut. It was like, this guy's freaking playing. He's just a full of right. Like, I know he's gonna be a horrible person. Um, and the film kind of tries to at first kind of show you like, oh, this guy's kind of a nice guy. They're playing, just video games together. He's having them like eat a bunch of snacks. It's like the cool uncle for a little bit, until things take a turn for the worse and things start slowly getting worse and worse. He starts, having to record his voice for him, saying, words and making like faces, and he's taking pictures of him, of the kid, just like making silly faces and stuff. All stuff like that. And it just gets progressively worse, and it's kind of a slow transition, and it's manipulative, and it's distorting the child, right? Um and it's something that is just extremely devastating and heartbreaking to watch. Um, anyways, there's a big time jump uh, that goes later into the film where we see Neil as a teenager, um, going into college age, kind of. So he's like the end of teenagehood, kind of going into college, I believe, because they said that's how I interpreted it. Um, but basically, that's how the film pursues, is he's now someone searching for that sexual high that he had as a child, which is horrifying, but it's part of his character, and that's kind of his arc, is he's looking to find something, and like, because when he was a kid he felt like he was special because of the manipulation he went through and the trauma he went through. He thought that he's looking for that same type of, thing with all these other men and these people. So he's kind of a prostitute in some ways. Actually, he definitely is. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. Probably I can. I don't know. It's a small enough channel, so who knows. But basically, that's how this film continues, with this character selling himself to men all over the place. It's pretty bad, right? But it's also connected to the story. It's a part of his character arc. It's not just there to be there. It's very much part of the story, and it's something that some of the best scenes uh, pertain to some of these sexual scenes. But it's part of the story, and it carries the story in a lot of ways. It progresses his character, it develops his character. None of it is used to be exploitative. It's all purposeful, and that's what makes this film so smart, I guess, in a way, and its resources, and it's not trying to be disrespectful. Um, I think it does it in the best way you possibly can when covering topics like this, because I think a lot of film and directors and just story writers are scared to pick up very tough topics like this, even though I think stories like this are important, that explore trauma and how it affects people and realistically affects people, not just however, like he doesn't pull back any punches, he shows it raw, like how it affects Neil, his childhood trauma, and who he is now, and that's another thing, is now where the film gets really interesting is the alien abduction part. So we're going to switch over to the second part of this video, starting now. So the film opens with actually with Brian, which is our second character we are talking about, played by Brady Corbet, or it might be Brady Corbett. I don't really know. I apologize. But he was the director of The Brutalist that came out in 2024. If you've seen that film with Adrian Brody, really great film. I recommend it. But he is a lot Neil, right? But he was only assaulted 2 times. So still really bad, and obviously it doesn't make it any, like, it's still horrible. But both of those times he blacked out and he thought he was abducted by aliens, and that's what makes this film very heartbreaking, is his realization that he himself was never abducted by aliens, and the truth was much more horrifying and tragic and realistic than rather being abducted by aliens. Being abducted by aliens would have been a better outcome than what he actually experienced as a kid. So there we have it. So coming to a close, I wanted to talk about why this film at the end of the day is so important. It combines and explores trauma in a way that I've never seen in a film, and I've seen a lot of films that kind of explore trauma, or at least, explore a character who's went through some traumatic things, but I've never seen a film that does it this well, because it's able to provide two perspectives. It's not just showing one person going through trauma, it's showing two people going through trauma, and how they both experience it and process it differently. And I think this film perfectly shows that, because people experience trauma differently. And as someone who's like really interested in psychology and how the mind works and stuff, this film also just really intrigued me in that sense as well. So if you're like considering doing psychology, or you already are like a psychologist or something, I recommend this film a lot, because I think it portrays all of those things in a pretty realistic way, and it's a great film. I recommend it, but at the same time, I can't recommend it for a second watch. Even though I probably will go down the road and watch it again, maybe a few more times, just because of like how much this first watch impacted me. I would watch it again, but it would have to be a really long time. It'd have to be years in between of me watching the film again, because it's a heavy film. But it really does teach things that I think are important, that society needs. Because it's not stuff that's explored very often, of course. So I think you guys should give it a watch. It's a great film. Gregg Araki is a very special director in cinema. He's created some really interesting films, and I would love to explore him longer and more thoroughly in later videos. Let me know if you guys want that. I watched Smiley Face. That was my first introduction to him, and I would tell you what, Smiley Face and Mysterious Skin are like not the same movie. those are really different movies. All right. Anyways, thank you for sticking around. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. More videos coming soon. Films that I love making, animations I love making, more videos like this talking about films, but also my own films. So please support in any way you can. I'd really appreciate it. Like all that junk, I'd really love it, man. And give this movie a watch if you haven't already. Yeah, thank you. See you in a bit.